Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om Vishwam Darpanadrishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijantargatam Pashyanat Manimayaya Bahiribhut Bhutam Yatha Nidraya Yat Sakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Swatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namahitam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's listen to Shiva Sankalpa Sukta.
यज्जाग्रतो दूरमुदैति दैवं तदु सुप्तस्य तथैवैति दूरङ्गमं ज्योतिषां ज्योतिरेकं तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु येन कर्माण्यपसो मनीषिणो यज्ञे कृण्वन्ति विदधेषु धीराः यदपूर्वं यक्षमन्तः प्रजानां तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु यत्प्रज्ञानमुत चेतो धृतिश्च यज्ज्योतिरन्तरमृतं प्रजासु यस्मान्नऋते किञ्चन कर्म क्रियते तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु येनेदं भूतं भुवनं भविष्यत् परिगृहीतममृतेन सर्वं येन यज्ञस्तायते सप्तहोता तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु यस्मिन् ऋचः सामयजूगुंषि यस्मिन् प्रतिष्ठिता रथनाभाविवाराः यस्मिन् कश्चित्तगुं सर्वमोतं प्रजानां तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु सुषारथिरश्वानि वयन्मनुष्यान्नेनीयते भीषुभिर्वाजिन इव हृत्प्रतिष्ठं यदजिरञ्जविष्ठं तन्मे मनः शिवसङ्कल्पमस्तु
So we pick up the thread of the second mantra today. We went over it a little bit, but let me kind of since it's been 3 weeks, let me set the context again so that you can fit it all together. So the first verse, which talked about the nature of my mind. So one thing that we should see is this. You know, when we talk about Maya Shakti, Ishvara's Maya Shakti, and there are so many definitions and explanations, some very, very technically sounding words that describe Maya in many, many different ways. So what Swami Vivekanandaji's advice was that you can try to understand it in that manner if you like, but really the thing that is most effective for an advanced student, a sadhaka of Vedanta, is this. Your mind is the Maya. I found that to be very, very simple to understand, simple to relate to on a day-to-day basis. As a very practical, sometimes we talk about Vedanta, what is the practical ways of understanding? This is a great example where this is a very practical way of understanding Maya Shakti, which is our mind. And so there is a overall macrocosmic phenomena, which is the very basis of this projection that we have individually. So you can say that this is a Maya Shakti if you want to really sort of separate the samashti from the vyashti, the macrocosmic from the individual. You can do that. But really speaking, the macrocosmic Maya is not that useful for me to be practical in the way I approach my own life. So from that perspective, it is much better to really understand that the workings of my mind, how my mind works, is really an expression of the Maya Shakti, and in fact can be said to be the Maya Shakti, as far as I'm concerned. It is a useful, very good way to look at it. So with that in mind, this whole Shiva Sankalpa Sukta, should have a clearer meaning for you and I, because you are addressing your mind in the way I project myself in my life, how my own self, the very reality of myself, how it gets projected out. And I think here the analogy, the modern analogy of if a film being projected in the on the screen, when you actually have a film. Now of course they are all digital, so I don't know exactly what happens. But in the old way, there's actually a film that is going around the projection of the light on a screen. So this is what is called projection. So the light is projected. Similarly, my light of the Atma's light. Atma is a light. It is really, so Chit Swarupa means it is the light that lights up my life. that light gets projected. And it gets projected through the film of the mind. So this is the phenomena that we should try to understand with these 6 verses put together in a small package and very nicely, really. So starting with Yad Jagrato Duram Udaiti Daivan Tad Suktasya Tathaivaiti Duram Gaman Jyotisham Jyotihi Ekam Tanme Mana Shiva Sankalpamastu. So in addressing my mind, I need to understand how the mind works, how I am projecting myself, and I am getting lost in my own projection. Here's the thing. And this is what I have to understand. And if I don't understand it, I'm lost. I am lost with all kinds of repercussions. It is kind of like I project it on a screen and it looks so real to me. The whole drama of the film looks so real to me if I'm an observer, that I'm just lost in the story of the drama of the film. Good and bad, and hero and heroine, and all kinds of stuff, the plots and things and so on. Just so totally absorbed by it, forgetting the fact that I am the one that is projecting it and nothing is happening to me. This is the story. And so for us to understand this projection, the first verse, now we can start to say how the 6 mantras lay it out. So the first mantra points out, for each of us with some small variations, very minor variations between you and I, all together, all living beings, and here the living beings being human beings, are being asked to say, if you want to separate your vision from the drama that you are projecting to the reality that you are, come with me. Let us take a tour of what is happening. So the first verse says, see how this projection is working. So the projection is that as soon as you wake up from sleep, the moment you wake up from sleep, the mind becomes active. It gets activated. And the activation of the mind is that it projects something very plausible, very attractive, very not attractive from a good or bad standpoint, but it takes you away from yourself. There's a word that I'm searching for in my mind. Captivates you. It captivates you. So the moment you wake up in the morning, you never knew exactly who you are, that you are the very unchanging light. But even if you are told a little bit about it in our lessons and so on, you kind of ignore it for the time being, because there is a life to be seen, to be led, to be enjoyed, to be suffered by the same token. Both sukha dukkha. And so it takes you away from you. So this is what it says. Yat jagrato duram udaiti daivam tadu tuptasya tathaivaiti. Daivam is used here. This is a very important verse, Devam, Daivam. And it has, its origin is the word Div. Div means Prakashatmakam. It is the very nature of the light. Jyotisham Jyoti. So Daivam and Jyoti are the one and the same. It is in fact the light. But here, in one of the explanations of the Mandukya Karika that we are going to eventually catch up with, we're far away from it, months away from it. In one of the explanations, just remarkable, very remarkable. The word Daivam or Devam is also explained as a one who is playing. So this is I'm just giving you some snippets here and there from collecting it from there, but very relevant in that sense. So here, our senses, as we begin to understand the elements of Brahmavidya, of Atmavidya, through our study, we are told that you are the Sakshi of whatever you see, which is true. You are the Sakshi of whatever you see. No doubt about it. But then in the very detailed explanation of the Karika that would be taken up eventually, I'm just giving you a little gist of that here in the short, in this 6 mantras. That is not enough for you to gain freedom from Sukha Dukkha. Just the fact that I am a Sakshi is not enough. It's not enough. And why it is not enough is because practically I get the opposite of that very quickly. This is a topic that's going to take some while, and I'm going to get into that when we come to those verses in the Karika, months away. But just to say that I'm a Sakshi is not very effective. It is effective as a first step, but not as an eventual step. Then what is it that I need to do above the initial step? This is where the word Daivam comes in. Devam comes in. And so in this explanation, Swamiji has mentioned that Devam means one who is capable of playing. He uses a Hindi word called Khiladi. So Khiladi means one who is playing a game. One who is capable of playing a game is Daivam. So here again, I am not going to get into the details of this. I'm just mentioning it as an explanation of the word Daivam. What it means is that my idea that I'm just a passive Sakshi, there's nothing that I can, of course it is given in a very positive way, that you're really not affected. True, you're not affected. Even if you're going through some problems like, I had through some dental work recently that I went through, and amazingly there's a lot of stuff that's going on. I just had a cataract surgery yesterday, and so there was a lot of stuff going on. It was very interesting for me to go through all these surgeries and so on, and yet be observant of what's happening. So it really certainly diminished any kind of issues that I had. I had no problems whatsoever with it. But this is still very minor. Very minor, because the moment your life goes on, you forget the fact you are a Sakshi, and you get involved with things, that happens very naturally. So this is what we have to really go through. So, but we use the word Daivam. What it says is it is not just a passive Sakshi. In fact, it is very capable of playing games. And one can ask, how is it am I going to play games? It doesn't have any legs and hands, and because in order to be a sportsman, you've got to really have a form, and the Sakshi doesn't have any form. So how can you say this is a Khiladi? How can you say it's a sportsman? How can you say that it's playing games? It's playing games. It is capable. This is what we have to understand. And in fact, if you want to just have if you want me to give you a quick rejoinder to quieten your objections down, is what we do in the dream state. And just as we do in the dream state, I do it in the waking state. So this will become clearer in our longer class. But at least even now you should see you're capable of playing games in a dream. Where does it all come from? Who's capable of doing it? Because the dream itself is jada. It is inert. It is like an appliance. The appliance cannot enervate itself. That is the very nature of what is called an appliance. Because unless somebody is working the appliance, it is just sitting there doing things. It cannot move on its own. Something is making it move. Daivam. So the Daivam has an enormous power. See, this is what I had in mind in this last Zoom class that we did on Saturday, when I think I just mentioned that there is a very important and relevant English word called I appreciate. That's what I had in mind. So as I read all this great insights by Swami Akhandanandaji, I'm beginning to see, put it all together, that really I need to appreciate my own power. What am I doing to project myself? How am I using my mind to project myself and therefore get into a problem? Anyway, so this is the first verse, which is basically talking about how I project myself in the world, and through the mind, because my projection is kind of like a film. So the mind is both the screen on which the projection is being done, and it is also the storyline of the projection. In any case, the screen and the film both are not the light that is projecting. The light is simply projecting. But you can see it from that perspective, that the light is so powerful that it can project through the film a storyline which looks very real. And if it gets confused by it, there is a reason for it. Anyway, that will come later, but now let me kind of put it back together again in terms of the first verse of this mantra. First mantra. Excuse me. And then we go to the second mantra. So to summarize the first mantra, it is simply to see how my mind works, how it just takes me away, and all day long I'm wandering. And then at night time it comes back to me. It gets resolved in me. It is like, remember we saw this example about Shakuni. Shakuni is a word, is a bird. That how the bird that may be attached to a string has an ability to move around from place to place. And it has a certain radius through which it can be very free. But then if it wants to rest once it has been tired, it has to come back to its own cage. There's nowhere else to go. Similarly, my mind, so yat jagrato duram udaiti daivam tadu suptasya tatha eveti, tatha eva eti. Just like that, it also travels back to me. So this duram gaman, so this jyoti, this light that looks very far away, is actually my own light. Duram gaman jyotisham jyotihi. It is the light of the light. It's not a separate light. There's only one Chidvastu in the whole world, which is Paramatma. And it just lights up through the same phenomena with each one of us. And so for me to now understand, I have to think, my gosh, my mind is the one. As soon as you get up in the morning, and I'm just encouraging you to remember these verses, commit them to memory, and do a Sankalpa. A Sankalpa for Sankalpa. That as soon as you open your eyes, you can see this phenomena. And if you keep repeating it, and once you completely understand the meaning as we are going to go through, then you regain a certain composure to see what is happening in your life and how the mind is taking you away from yourself, how it is coming back, and what do I need to do to redirect it in the way which is very beneficial to me. Tanme mana Shiva Sankalpamastu. First I need to understand how my mind works. So the first verse is, the first mantra is an introduction to the basics of how your mind is working. Just very short term. Okay? Right, then we come to the second verse. So in coming to the second verse, what we have to see is this. The way my mind works, the way everybody's mind works, not just mine and yours, everybody's mind works, is that it is a natural way of it to project the Atma of everyone. Natural way, and I say natural very deliberately. Natural meaning that unless it is modified and educated, this is the way it continues to behave from the birth to the death for everyone. All the variations are there, but more or less the common thing for everyone is that the natural way for the mind is to take you away from yourself and to play games, come back again at night time, go to sleep, become quiet, and then start again in the morning and project itself. Continuous projection after projection after projection. This is a natural one. The one which will be called prakrita. Prakrita means prakritehe janyamiti prakritam, which is The moment we are born, we are endowed with this. Variations, the baby doesn't have all the thoughts yet. The seeds of the thought have not germinated, but they will. And when they will, then things start. Very interesting. There is actually we all know this for a fact. You and I can appreciate that when a child is there and it starts to become older, becomes a toddler, maybe 2 years old, close to maybe 3, it yet does not have any self-identity. It just behaves very naturally. Of course, it has likes and dislikes, but it doesn't have them be embedded in their mind yet, but it will happen. So, Swami Dayananda used to give this example. For a while, when the child falls down, it simply says, oops, I fell down. And if it gets hurt, it says, I got hurt. We see this in the youngsters. Okay? You keep falling down and you say, I fell down, I fell down. There comes a point, for example, the child will say, I failed, which is natural. But there comes a point where the repeated failure embeds a self-identity. I am a failure. There is an inflection point in your life. Some self-identity comes in. And so the projection becomes, it's all false. No one is a failure, no one is a success. It's a combination. And so the child's initial natural way that I failed is the right one. But then due to lots of other issues, it solidifies itself as that I am a failure. Not everyone, but most of everyone. And this is where the ego comes in. Then you have feelings of I am very superior, I am very inferior, nobody likes me. And this becomes a crisis in the teenage. All of those things happen. But my point is this, that the mind at this point is natural, and what it means is uneducated. Uneducated. This is the reason for my introduction of the second mantra. First mantra is the mind which is natural. The second mantra says, do you know something? This mind which is natural can be transformed, can be shaped. It's kind of like another way to look at it is that you have basically earth. So you have dirt, you have earth, and it is the natural one. It is just everybody can see the dirt on the ground and so on. But in that dirt, you can transform that into a shape which is useful to you. So for example, if you cannot do that, not easily do that with sand, but even with sand you can do that. So the process is that you have to take dirt and you have to wet it, and then you have to take all the fluid out of that and shape it into some kind of a cup, and then you dry it. So this is a transformation of a natural earth into something which is very useful in the form of a cup or a saucer or something like that. So this transformation of the mind is now talked about in the second verse. So the first verse is the natural mind which you and I have all possessed, and many of us just lead through the life with some minor modifications of it, but not really taking a transformational approach to the mind. But it can be done. It should be done. So that one is talked about in the second verse, second mantra, which we started again. So let's get into the details of that. So he says, Yena. Yena refers to the mind also. So everything is basically, the main address is the mind of the human being, the Maya Shakti of the human being. This is what is being addressed. So Yena means, this is the third case of saying by which. Karmani apasaha manishinaha yagye krinvanti vidatheshu dhiraha. I'm not quite sure whether we actually went through all these words, but let's do that, even if I think I've forgotten exactly. Usually sometimes I revise the video to see whether I actually talked about it, but I didn't get a time to do that today. So it may be a repetition, not only a revision, but even a repetition, for which please forgive me. But let's just go through these words individually. Okay. One is Yena, by which mind. Karmani, all karmas, and apasaha. And I think we did go through, because I remember talking about Mahatma Gandhi, who did not understand the rasa. Yeah, I think we already talked about it. Who did not understand the rasa of Bhagavatam. And so apas here means the waters through which rasa can be created. Karma is not alone, but karma in which a very pleasant experience, a very prayerful experience of the karma becomes possible. And so this is why they say that really, and I think you and I can relate to it, that you can, your work during the day can be either a bore, it can be really a burden, because you're just doing it, there's no rasa in it. Or if you have some passion, some discovery, and it is a different meaning altogether. So here it says, what is sketching out through the second mantra is that manishinaha. Manishinaha means manashaha isha manisha, buddhi, vijnanamaya kosha. Means people who think and who are wise, who have their minds under control, because that's what it is all about. You have to direct your mind and say, enough of this natural wandering around. Let's focus on the right things. So that is the manisha. And when you do that, with the passion and self-discovery of what the importance of doing that is, it becomes very pleasant. Apas comes up. So anyway, that is what is talked about, the process of transforming the natural mind into something which is shaped for your own good. How this is being done. So it says, Yena karmani apasaha manishinaha. So although Manishi means the ones who have conquered their mind. And this is not something that we can say as is very alien to us. How are we going to conquer our mind? That's not the point. I remember Swami Dayanand also pointed it out. He said, almost all of you that listen to me, Swamiji used to say, are educated people who have already figured out exactly how to focus their minds for accomplishing things. You go to high school, that process becomes very ripe. If you go to college, where there is a lot of very sophisticated things to be understood, you've already figured out how to do that. You study. So it's not alien to us. But what is alien is that the same process of conquering our mind, of focusing on it, becomes useful for my own good that I didn't know about. That's the alien thing part of it. Process remains the same, but its applicability for a larger aspect of my life. I didn't know that this could be done. I remember this so well. When I started listening to Swami Chinmayananji, and then even more so with Swami Dayanand, what was amazing to me, which I had never experienced before, was how my mind was naturally focused. It was up until then you had to kind of force it. You had to get up in the morning and study and go to college and all that. It was not very natural. But what really amazed me was, I still remember that. Then when I listened to the discourses by the Mahatmas, I didn't have to tell my mind, be quiet, listening to them or anything. No, be quiet, don't focus on it, don't do anything. Nothing like that. And I found that to be fascinating. Without my trying to, say anything to my mind, it was naturally absorbed and very pleasantly absorbed. I really enjoyed that. And also, that feeling of the stillness of the mind, the youthfulness of the subject matter, was something I was not going to give up. And I haven't to this life. 50 years have gone by. So this is what would be called, you can say this, yena karmani apasaha. So there the rasa comes in. My study of Vedanta is not imposed by anyone. I cannot find anything which is equally as beautiful and pleasant for my own mind. Very lucky that I got involved. I got introduced to it by them. But this is the process the second verse is talking about. Yena karmani apasaha manishinaha yagye krinvanti vidatheshu dhiraha. So this becomes now interesting. So as I think I mentioned to you that in this second shloka, second mantra rather, it's not a shloka, it's a mantra because it's a Vedic shloka, which is a mantra. The most important word is yajna. Yajna is the fulcrum of the second. Every mantra will have some kind of a focus on it. And here is the yajna. So the yajna was something that we need to appreciate. And also, yajne krinvanti vidatheshu dhiraha. So dhira and banishinaha are, there are some small differences between those two, but they are describing the same person. So the dhira is also a manishina. So in manishi, buddhi is important. In dhira, some vairagya and courage is involved. And so it's a combination of those two. So anyway, so that person who is engaged in transforming one's mind, which was prakrita, and I am now shaping it. How am I shaping it? Yajne krinvanti. And vidatheshu. I think I mentioned it to you. The vidatheshu is very interesting. This is not something that I had to look up the meaning of the vidatheshu. So here Swami Akhandananda says it's a combination. He's also a great scholar of Sanskritam. So they studied it they were born in villages where the study of Sanskrit was very important in their families. For me, that didn't happen until I was in my 20s and even 30s, as like for many of you. But these are Mahatmas that are born in the understanding of Sanskritam. And so his knowledge of Sanskritam is just amazing. We will, many of the words, the etymology, the meaning, just absolutely beautiful. So here he explained the word vidatheshu. So he says the vidatha is composed of vid plus atha. And there's some Panini construct which allows these two rather disparate words to come together. So vid and atha means one that has plenty of samagri. Samagri means the potential things that you do in your yajna. When you do the yajna, either your priest or yourself, if you're going to do yajna at home, you should be very well equipped with all these things. And if you go to the temple, sometimes the priest will say, can you please bring some coconut and some ghee? They will have it themselves, but sometimes they will ask if you want to do it personally, please bring them. But a yajna has to be done with a lot of samagri. That samagri is called vidatheshu. So what it means is that in your and my life, so the two things. One is the yajna here is my attitude of looking at things throughout my life, not just doing it. Many people think yajna means just doing a homa. You just go to a temple and you light up some fire and you offer it to your Ishtadevata, and this is one form of yajna. But here the manishinaha, dhiraha, perform yajna in the attitude of yajna in the entire life. And vidatheshu here means, samagri means you must have the ability of understanding how this is being done. Just casually saying, I'm doing yajna is not enough. For example, we already talked about it in the previous classes, that everything in nature is automatically doing yajna. We may not see it, it may not be very obvious, but any tree, by its various ways of offering itself for the service of, the most important one is as a source of oxygen. What a beautiful thing it is done. It is doing yajna. all the natural things, the sun, doing yajna. And as we have seen already, that human beings are the only ones that they are maybe either they are not doing yajna, or even if they are doing yajna, they are not aware of it. But we should be. And we should be with thoughts, with knowledge, with understanding. That is vidateshu. That is the samagri. Anyway, so that is the first line. Yeah, I think that there was one thing that I think I may not have talked about it, but I will. I will just briefly mention it in Dhira. So in Viveki, so there are two aspects of Dhira, two elements of Dhira. One is being a Viveki, being able to distinguish what is right from wrong. And so this is what is called Viveka. And the second one is Dhairyam, Dhira. So Dhairyam here means, really speaking, Vairagya. Vairagya means, an aspect of the Vairagya here is that if there are some difficulties that you encounter as part of doing yajna, you should not be swayed by it. You should have enough shraddha that this is okay, this is going on. So here, again, I think when we come to that in the Mandukya in more detail, appreciating Ishvara as part of appreciating Ishvara as the Antaryami for each one of us. Swami Vivekananda says, one way to appreciate Ishvara, a very beautiful section, we'll come to that in some much more detail, I assure you. Lots to talk about. But just one aspect here, he says that one way to appreciate Ishvara is that even the dukkha that it gives you is for your own good. He says this is a very important way, this is a very important element of the word dhira. So if some obstacles do come, if there are some problems and so on, so for example, if you go for some surgeries, dental surgery or eye surgery and so on, there is some dukkha involved. But that dukkha is for your own good. So similarly is the dukkha that you and I go through in our lives. But if we do not have the appreciation that Ishvara is the doctor who is giving me this dukkha very deliberately so that I can learn from it and benefit from it, I lose the opportunity. It is exactly like, I think I was telling you this, my younger son had some issues after he was born, at the time of his birth, and we had to go through a number of surgeries. I don't know, I forget how many, 9 or 10 major surgeries. Some issues with the mouth. And I remember when he was very young, he didn't know what was happening. Then as he started to grow up, he started to detest going to the hospital. And he would start crying and say, these doctors are my enemies. So he used to say, no, No, they are not your enemies. It has to be done. No, no, no. Why does it have to be done? Why are you putting me through all of this? Leave me the way I am. Exactly the same thing. So the word dhira incorporates. Dhairyam means that even if I recognize Ishvara, see, that's the difference. In my son's case, he really didn't understand that the doctor was giving him problems for your own good. This is where Shraddha comes in. This is where the appreciation of Ishvara comes in. I don't appreciate that. I keep in, what is happening to me? Why are these things happening to me? I don't know if anybody cares about. I don't know what's going to. All these kinds of thoughts come in if you do not appreciate Ishvara. If you start to appreciate means to feel. Yes, yes, yes. Then there's a certain smile that comes in. And even if you are going through the dukkha, you'll say, okay, Baba, whatever you want to do with me, okay, I'm yours. Just handle me. I know whatever is doing is for my own good, and so I'm in your hands. And so that kind of an attitude is the dhira. So anyway, so the word dhira here means, so yena karmani apasaha manishinaha yagye krinvanti vidatheshu dhiraha. Then the second line. We have a few more minutes. I think we should do that. Yada purvam yaksham antaf prajanam. So let's just do that. So apurvam. Apurvam here means before. Apurvam means one that has nothing before that. And this is referring to the mind, by the way. This is referring to the mind. Yena. So, yena. Yad apurvam. The one which is apurvam. Apurvam means one that has nothing, one that did not come after anything. Anadi, in fact. Anadi. So here, the mind, how can the mind be anadi? Mind is anadi. What does that mean? What it means is that as a adhyaropa, as a projection upon myself, I have always been like this. In other words, myself endowed with my mind Shakti, projecting Shakti, Maya Shakti, has always been there. Even before any specific projections through my indriyas. So, in all these sense organs and the organs of action and so on, they came later. But the mind was there even before them. In fact, the mind is my own capability, and I have always been around. And my mind has always, as a projection capability, has always been around. This is the meaning of apurvam. Because one can have a question, when did the mind arise? The mind disappears temporarily. But disappears means does not gets destroyed, it becomes in the seed form only. So at night time, when I am in Sushupti Avastha, the mind stops projecting, but it is still there in a seed form, sleeping, unprojecting, still there. It never disappears in the past, but there will be a time when the projection will not be necessary and it will disappear. So it is anadi, but it has an anta. Atma is both anadi and ananta. It has no end. It is always there by its very nature. But the projecting quality of the Atma, which is the mind, is apurvam. Just like because it has always been there. There is no beginning of the ignorance. Swami Dayanand used to give this example. He says, supposing you're teaching a class, let's say. Supposing I'm teaching a class, and pretty soon, supposing my brother happens. So my brother is, he's there. Supposing he rings the bell, the door, and my wife is not there. So I ask him to come. I'm just teaching a class. Come. In fact, come and sit down here. So now, my brother comes in, and you see him. And you didn't know who it was, so I introduce him as, this is my brother. And so then you say, oh, that's interesting, that's your brother, yeah. And then you can say, yeah, the two of you look alike, or you don't look alike, whatever. You have make opinions. Now my question is, when did your ignorance of my brother start? Because up until this time, you didn't know this was my brother. So you are ignorant, even if he's there, supposing he's sitting there and I don't introduce him as my brother. So you say there's some man sitting next to him. I don't know what he's doing there. But suppose I introduce him and say, this is my brother. And then you say, oh, interesting, it's your brother. Then you can say, is he younger to you? It is older than you? All those kinds of things. But you were ignorant that he was my brother up until that time. Now I ask you, when did your ignorance of my brother start? If I ask you, when did the ignorance end, you can say 5 minutes ago. But I ask you, when did your ignorance of my brother start? That's not a valid question. That's not a valid question. Why is it not a valid question? Because if your ignorance of my brother had started at time t1, that means before that there was no ignorance, that was knowledge. And that's not possible. Once you have a knowledge, then ignorance cannot come on top of that. So therefore, ignorance is apurvam. The mind also, which is the very nature of the ignorance, is apurvam. And apurvam also here means, in the explanation, that it is before the very specific sense organs go to work. It is already there. Then the word yaksham. Antaf prajanam yaksham. In the inside of all praja, all beings, all human beings, inside of them there is a yaksha. What is this yaksha? And so this is what would be called the very power of projection. The power of projection is called yaksha. There is something behind inside of us which is very powerfully projecting my life in front of me. What is this yaksha? This word yaksha has been made famous in the Kena Upanishad. In the Kena Upanishad, as you know, the story is, the very last part of it is, that there was a battle between the Devas and Asuras, the good people and the not so good people. And there the Devas defeated the Asuras. And they defeated all the Rakshasas and so on in the battle. And so the good prevailed over the evil. And all the Devas were very happy about it. They were congratulating each other, shaking hands, and distributing sweets and so on and so forth. And they were so happy. We are very powerful, and you know what? God is with us. He's going to bless us because we are all good people with good intentions, and we were able to subjugate these evil tendencies of the people. We're very happy about it. We have overcome. So while they were having this celebratory party, somebody saw that there was a small, powerful light with no particular form. And this light was lighting up the whole area. And it seemed to be suddenly descended there, which was not there before. So they were all saying, we've never seen anything like this. Who is this? What is this? So they all got together and he says, okay, I tell you what, instead of everybody descending on it, let's just send someone to understand. So they sent one Devata. And I believe it was Agni that was sent, the Agni Devata. So it approached so this is the Yaksha. It approached the Yaksha, and before it could interrogate him by saying, who are you? The Yaksha spoke to this Agni and say, who are you? So this Agni was very upset. How can anybody not know me? I am a very basic fire in the whole creation. And this guy, is he putting me on or what? So anyway, he kept his cool and he says, I am Agni Devata. So the Yaksha says, what do you do? So he says, here we go again. He says, don't you know, I can burn anything in the whole creation, reduce it to ashes. The Yaksha says, really? That's very impressive. Okay. Can I give you something to burn? So the Agni Devata was laughing and he says, what are you talking about? Okay, all right. So he put a blade of grass and said, burn this. So this guy was so insulted that, my goodness, I can burn the whole earth. And he's just giving me one So he started to burn the grass, and the grass will not burn. So then the Agni Devata said, oh my goodness, there is something amazing going on in here. How could I not being able to? So he came back with literally tail between his legs, as Kenopanishad says. Then some other devatas were sent. Vayu Devata was sent. Same thing. So Yaksha asked him, who are you? So he says, I can blow away with my wind. So he says, let's see, blow away this blade of grass. The blade of grass could not move at all. He also came back just saying, my goodness, there's something really funny going on. It's just amazing. Finally, they approached their leader, who is Indra, and said, sir, none of us can really figure out who this Yaksha is. You go. When Indra went near the Yaksha, something funny happened. The Yaksha disappeared. He is approaching him, and right in front of his eyes, the Yaksha just disappears. Indra, being one of the wisest devatas, said, this is incredible. So he asked Uma, the very nature of Parameshwara and his teacher, and said, Uma, who is this? What's going on? Uma said, this is Paramatma. Is Paramatma in the form of a Yaksha? Yes. Why? What is this going on? So Uma said, listen, you are all great people. You are all devatas. And you are worshipful. We all know that. You are the best amongst all the celestials. But you have a problem. And the problem is, you think you are doing things. You don't understand, you are just an appliance. You are jada. You are inert. And you have been constructed by Ishvara. And you're making a mistake that you think you are the very doer of things. You think that you defeated the Asuras. You won the war. And you have a lot of ego as a result of that. That's a false ego. And I specifically sent someone to teach you a lesson. And that lesson is, it's not you that are doing it. It is Paramatma in the form of the Yaksha inside of you. You are not the dreamer. You are just the creation of the dream. But in fact, it is the Atma, the very light, that makes you what you are. Investigate that. Look into it. So that is the meaning of this second mantra. Yena karmani apasaha manishinaha yajñe krinvanti vidatheshu dhiraha yada purvam yaksham antaf prajanam. He says, my mind, now that I am understanding by what all these wise people are engaged in the yajna, in the search of who is nothing but the very powerful yaksha, the very Paramatma inside of me. So this is what is meant by it's not just a pure sakshi. It's a very powerful khiladi. It's a very sports person, daivam. So that investigation must be done. Otherwise you will just stop there and say, I am a sakshi, I am a sakshi, I am a sakshi. And it's a good first step, but you are not progressing into the next few steps. And so this is how the two mantras are placed together. One is the prakrita form of the mind, and the other one is the educated form of the mind, which I need to investigate into, like all the wise people do. So that's the sense of how these two verses are. Okay, so with that, I'll wind up the class. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. So Keshav, yes, in a way you're right. You're right in the fact that it's not as though Ishvara initiates dukkha. That's not correct. He cannot initiate dukkha. But Ishvara is also a bhishaka. Bhishaka means a doctor. And so even though the dukkha is due to one's individual actions, you are right. But in the karma phala, the datritvam of the karma phala, in the form of dukkha, is also for my well-being. So the same analogy for a doctor. So even though the doctor did not really create the problem for me, but he creates a surgery for me for a problem that was not created by him, but he still gives me the right remedy which may involve dukkha in order to create sukha for me. So that's the way I would. Anyway, it's very nice to see all of you. I really miss teaching for my own self. It's fun to keep in touch, and we will continue this next week, and then this next Saturday, because Swami Muktanandaji is here and giving a lot of classes, so I thought that I wouldn't overburden you by having this class as well. So we will not have a class next Saturday, but we will continue that after that. So hope to see you in one form or the other. Very good. Hari Om.